everybody. Welcome to another episode of Big Mouth Woolly Bass Podcast. I'm Ryan Willis.
And I'm Matt Willis.
As you can see, Matt is back in Arkansas. Yeah, open up a can of Arkansas. Matt, how was the drive back home?
A lot better than the drive heading to California, I'll tell you that much. But we got back here in record pace. Only spent the night once in New Mexico and made it back home safely somehow.
Let's finally discuss Week 18, Team Spanos, the LA Chargers, at Las Vegas against the Raiders. Basically, a win in your in scenario, you make the playoffs. And then, of course, there was that fun tidbit before the game started. Oh, yeah, if these teams tie somehow, which only happens usually about once or twice a year, both of these teams will get in. So you had that dramatic effect to it. Of course, it was Sunday Night Football, literally the last game of the regular season, a lot on the line. And that game lived up to the hype and then some, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, some people suggested the idea that both teams would just take a knee all, 70 minutes? What fun TV that would have been. But yeah, that game, I did not have the fortune to watch its entirety. I was actually at a friend's house, but I watched bits and pieces of it, and it was just a typical Team Spanos game where the Chargers, I mean, they started off not so good, but they had the game in their hands so many times, so many opportunities in. All they had to do is tie, too. And what do? They get cocky, just like they moved to LA to begin with.
But you and I, as biased as we are, would both agree that the Chargers were the better team. The Chargers are a better team than the Raiders. Like, I don't even think that's really up for debate. I mean, first you just look at the quarterbacks. Justin Herbert is probably a top 10 quarterback. Derek Carr, I don't even know if he's in the top 20. So that alone should tell you something. The Chargers' weapons are better. Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. It's no contest. And both defenses are terrible, so you can't really say, well, the Raiders have a great defense. No, they don't. So on paper, the Chargers are the better team, and they should have been the ones that made it to the playoffs. They really shouldn't have even been in this situation to begin with, but they're the Chargers. If there's a way to lose a game, they're going to find it. That's how they've always been.
But yeah, it's true, though, because, I mean, just the way I'm pulling up their schedule from this year right now on my laptop, and they started off the season very, very good. They did have a bad loss versus Dallas early in the year, but they had a good one against the Chiefs. They also beat the Raiders at home, or home with quotations. They beat the Browns. Like, they were up, pretty high in the standings. And a lot of people, not us, but a lot of the so-called experts early on were just saying, yeah, Chargers underdog Super Bowl candidate. And I think, they just had a few bad losses. They got destroyed by the Ravens. They lost to New England, the Vikings, just to name a few. And then they would, win a game versus the Bengals and, look like world beaters, but then get destroyed by the Broncos the next week. So just like the game at Sunday night versus the Raiders, inconsistency all around. They put this, the stat sheet looks amazing. Herbert puts up touchdowns and yards. Eckler, same thing, but they cannot close out the game, which has been the same issue for the past 10 years now for that team.
And let's not forget they had lost a couple weeks prior to the woeful Houston Texans.
That's right.
So if they would have taken care of business against them, which they should have, they wouldn't have even been in this position to begin with. But again, classic Chargers. Matt, the defense definitely let the Chargers down, but I feel like Brandon Staley was really the number one reason why the Chargers lost this game. And there's one particular play, Matt. I know you know where I'm going with this. the 4th down from their own, what was it, their 18-yard line? It was 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 from their own 18. They decide to go for it. And not only do they decide to go for it, it's, idiotic to do that in the first place. It's also moronic to just hand the ball off and run up the middle. At least put the ball in Herbert's hands, right? I could not understand for the life of me that play call. Just made no sense.
Yeah. Oh, that Brandon Staley. It's funny, like how I just mentioned, like they missed the playoffs. Now they're being inconsistent. That's nothing new. But Staley, his coaching style is completely different from Anthony Lynn, Mike McCoy, and Norv Turner.
I understand wanting to be aggressive, and I applaud coaches that kind of just want to go for it. But there's a difference between being aggressive and being reckless. And Brandon Staley was just being reckless. He was just being stupid, man. Like, no coach would go for it in that situation from their own 18-yard line unless there was only like a minute or two left in the game. Then obviously, yeah, you have to go for it. But there was still plenty of time at that point. The game was not out of hand, was not out of reach, and they don't get it, and they give to the Raiders a field goal, and that honestly killed them in the end. Because if they would have just punted the ball away, I mean, I know the Chargers defense is terrible, and maybe they would have given up a long drive anyway there, but you take your chances with the longer field. You don't just hand them an automatic 3 points like that. It's unbelievable.
He treats the game like Madden, and you can't do that in real life, simply put.
Yeah, he was acting like a 13-year-old kid playing a video game. It was blowing my mind. So anyway, the Raiders had this game wrapped up, as we all know, but somehow, some way, and I guess this is a testament to how great Herbert is, he was able to rally the troops. He converted like 1 million 4th downs on those last couple of drives. And when they needed a touchdown, they got it. He literally scored a touchdown, threw a touchdown with no time left on the clock to tie the game. But the thing is, Matt, if Staley was going for it in every situation all game long, really all season long, in my opinion, they should have gone for 2 when they scored that touchdown at the end of regulation. Yeah. Like, why not just go for the win? Like, the Raiders could not stop the Chargers when they really needed to. Every 4th down, the Chargers converted. Herbert was just doing whatever he wanted to on that drive. So, in my opinion, again, Staley messed that up. He should have just gone for 2. Go for the win right then and there. Don't take your chances in overtime. You have the hot hand there with your quarterback. Their defense is exhausted. Just go for it. What do you got to lose at that point? That's your MO anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that they've been living and dying playing that way this entire year, just taking those chances, going for 2, going for it on 4th down. Nice. But so it was a bit surprising when they did line up for that field goal. And then overtime happened.
Yeah, so as we all know, I'm sure by now, the Raiders and Chargers exchanged a couple field goals. And the Raiders had the ball in the closing minutes. And it looked like, Matt, from the outside looking in, that the Raiders were going to just be completely fine, completely content having the game end in a tie. Because they made the playoffs, the Chargers get in, everybody goes home happy, right? But Brandon Staley decides to call a timeout after the 2nd down play, correct? They ran the ball on 2nd down. And Staley's like, you know what? I'm going to burn a timeout here because if we stop him on this next play, I want the ball back and we're going to go down and score. We're going to win this game. So the Raiders were like,
what, 40 seconds left?
You want to play it like that, do you? All right, fine. Well, we're just going to go ahead and run our best run play here, and we'll see what happens. And by the way, you have like the worst run defense in all of football, so good luck stopping us. Now, Staley claims, Matt, of course, he said this after the game, that the reason he called a timeout is because he wanted to get his best run unit in the game. And I'm like, what run unit? You guys have been getting trampled on all season long, and in this game as well. Like, who's your, run stopping specialist? You don't have no Jamal Williams on this team. You kidding me? So honestly, they were better off just letting the clock go, man. Because again, the Raiders admitted after the game, both Rick Bisaccia and Derek Carr said after the game, yeah, the tie was definitely on our minds. We were definitely thinking about it. It's like, yeah, no kidding. They weren't going to risk it at that point. There was only, a minute left and change anyway in the game. So.
Oh, yeah, it's just.
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous call by Staley to use that timeout. Using Madden as a reference, like maybe, you can chuck up a Hail Mary 80-yard touchdown Madden. I guess that's what Staley had in mind. But yeah, just totally idiotic. No other way around. And not only that, too, they didn't have to win the game. Let's make that clear. Like, the Chargers did not have to win this game to make the postseason. So, of course, at that point, Raiders have the ball in Chargers territory. You want to get the tie at the bare minimum. So, just idiotic all around. And
he got greedy.
I mean, just stupid. He did. Absolutely.
At that point, like, if there was still like 6 minutes or whatever left in the overtime period, I guess I could understand. But this was the closing minute of the game, man. Just take the tie. You have your ticket right there in front of you. Punch it. You're going to the playoffs. No, it's the Raiders. It's our rival. We want to beat them. Okay, well, what happened? They hand the ball off to Jacobs. He gashes them for 10+ yards. They're in field goal range. They were kind of, I guess, in field goal range already before that play, Matt, but it would have been like close to a 60-yard field goal, I think, at that point. When Jacobs goes off for the long run, it made it, I believe, was it a 48-yarder or something like that? So a much more doable kick. And Carlson, their kicker, hasn't missed a single kick in that stadium since they started playing there last year. So sure enough, the Raiders wait until the clock goes all the way down to 1 second. Derek Carr calls a timeout, and you just see the grin on his face. You stupid mother effers. We got you now. And the rest is history. Team Spanos goes home. Eliminated from the playoffs. The Raiders got in. It was a glorious, glorious ending to the 2021 regular season.
I mean, in the history of the Chargers, both San Diego and LA, I mean, I might go as far to say that loss to the Raiders a few weeks ago, maybe as bad as the Holy Roller, almost close to that AFC Championship game back in the 80s. Like, I think that's up there historically as just heartbreaking, most terrible losses. And it seems like all those historical games always go to the Raiders too, which is funny. But I mean, that's just going to be one in the history books that we're going to be talking about years from now, saying, remember that game where the Chargers blew it in overtime?
But unlike the previous heartbreaks when they were still in San Diego, we can celebrate this one because, well, we're not fans anymore.
Exactly.
Cheers. Cheers to that. All right. Enough about Team Spanos, Matt. Let's talk about this past weekend with the Wild Card Weekend. We had all these games, including one last night on Monday Night Football. I guess we'll start with that one. Why not? The Cardinals and the Lambs, Matt. We both thought the Cardinals were going to win this game. And boy, did we look foolish. The Rams just absolutely destroyed the Arizona Cardinals. The final score of that game was 34 to 11. It honestly felt like it was much more of a blowout than that.
Yeah, I didn't watch too much of that game. I didn't really tune in until like the third quarter, and I saw the Rams, aka the Lambs, were up 28-0 And I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I didn't tell Ryan I thought the Cardinals were going to win because he's going to mention this on the show. But
I felt the same way about how I texted you before the game. Like, I just want to put it out there. I think the Cardinals are going to win this game.
I was not expecting that kind of performance. I know they're missing DeAndre Hopkins, and I know James Conner, the running back's banged up. But my God, Fisher, like, what was that?
Well, the Cardinals really the last month of the season, Matt, just did not look right. And Kyler Murray, after having such a tremendous first half of the season, he got hurt and he was out for about a month. And when he came back, he just never looked the same. I don't know if it's because, was it his ankle that he hurt? I believe it was. I don't know if the ankle just never recovered fully or what, but he just never looked the same when he came back. And I understand losing Hopkins, that's a big blow. He's a top 5 receiver in the game. But come on, man. Like, if you're supposedly the superstar quarterback that we've seen, flashes of in the past, you should be able to overcome that. And James Conner had an unbelievable season. I mean, he was like a top 5 running back. And they have other weapons. So I don't know. Like, I thought this was going to be a really competitive game. I mean, they're 2 division teams. They played each other twice this year. They know each other well. Matt Stafford going in the last night, Matt, 0 playoff wins. So I really thought it was just lining up for the Cardinals to pull off a mini upset here. But the Rams took care of business. Credit to them. But, yeah, just really disappointed with the Cardinals. I mean, they just looked like they did not belong anywhere near that field last night.
Yeah, a lot of injuries popped up for that team, and I think Kyler Murray's not 100%. I think for him to just struggle like the last few weeks of the year. They did beat Dallas, which we'll talk more about that soon. But no, just very disappointing all around. And a lot of people think Cliff Kingsbury should be fired, or at least there's some rumblings about it. I don't think they should fire him. You think they should? I personally don't think they should fire Cliff Kingsbury, only because every year since he's been the head coach there, that team has improved. I get they have a lot better expectations this year, and they were once 7-0. I get that, but I don't think I think they should give him at least another year, but I do think his seat is getting a lot warmer now.
Dingleberry. Man, the only reason I say that they should fire him is because I saw a stat, and I probably should have pulled it up before we started recording, but going back to when he was the head coach at Texas Tech, every year his teams lose like the last 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5 games of the season. Like clockwork. It happens every single year that he's been a head coach, wherever he's been. So clearly, for whatever reason, when the pressure is really on and when his teams really need to win, it doesn't happen. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the talent is there, and there's just no excuses for them to play that poorly down the stretch and to lay an egg like that last night. I feel like they should fire him, to be perfectly honest with you. But if they do bring him back, which I'm sure they are, next year they have to do something. Like, they have to make it to the playoffs and go far. Because I'm sure they're going to build upon this team. This is still a good team, no matter how you slice it up. But, yeah, I mean, the expectations are going to be high. So I hope he's ready to roll.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think his seat is, I want to say it's burning hot, not the sizzler type hot, but I do think it's getting, I definitely think it's getting warmer. I mean, I think their offense is going to be good. They got to get Hopkins back. They just got to get healthy there. They could add some pieces defensively in the draft and free agency. I think that would help them, because the Rams, clearly, they just went up and down the field versus them. Of course, it didn't help either that the Cardinals got shut out, but that defense, I do think, needs to improve, especially in that tough NFC West.
Oh, Matt, don't worry. They'll bring J.J. Watt back next year, and J.J. Watt always stays healthy. He always plays every single game of every season. Zingers!
Yeah, it's sad because I really love J.J. Watt, but I mean it's true. He can't stay healthy to save his life.
He tore his shoulder halfway through the year, and he did play last night. And I give the guy credit for that because I think they originally said like he was for sure done for the year. It was going to be like a 6-month injury or something. He came back in a couple months. The guy is tough as nails, but gosh, he's made out of glass. He just gets hurt every single year, like clockwork. And it sucks because he's such a great player. Well, he's won Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, I think, when he was with the Texans. So you want to see, players like that on the field, but he misses so many games, man. So anyway, that's a little side rant on that. All right, Matt, let's move on from that game. Let's talk about, bringing the Raiders back up. I guess we'll get that over with. The Raiders and Bengals. So the Bengals had not won a playoff game since the year 1991. And the Raiders had not won a playoff game since they went to the Super Bowl last, which was in 2002, which was the year that they came here to San Diego and got their asses beat by the Buccaneers.
The Raiders have just sucked, period, ever since that Super Bowl. So it was kind of one of those things where somebody was finally going to, taste success for the first time in 20 or 30 years in the case of the Bengals.
Yeah, literally the last time the Bengals won a playoff game, I was, I think, 6 months old. Is that right?
Crazy.
I think I was 5 months old. So yeah, it had been a long time to say the least. I was rooting for the Bengals, Matt, just because of how long it's been. And also, I'm a big Joe Burrow fan. I'm a big Jamar Chase fan. So I really wanted to see the Bengals advance. Plus, I mean, they're the better team. We were just saying how the Chargers are better than the Raiders. So obviously, the Bengals are better. And luckily, we got our wish. The Bengals did win the game.
26-19, yeah.
26-19, there you go. Yeah, so I mean the Bengals, they didn't play a great game, but again, when you're playing a kind of a mediocre team like the Raiders, you don't have to play a great game. They did just enough. Of course, the Raiders did have a chance at the end there to tie it up, but they couldn't get it done. Derek Carr threw like 5 yards short of the end zone. Like, yeah, that'll get the job done, right? So I mean, I don't know, man. That game was kind of weird. Like it was mildly entertaining, but I just never got the sense that the Raiders were going to win that game. I just felt like the Bengals were kind of in cruise control.
Yeah, I agree. Probably the most noteworthy play that happened this game was, I think it was in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken, but it was when Joe Burrow was rolling to his right along the sideline. He threw it, and I guess the referee thought it was out of bounds, but he didn't blow the whistle until the ball was almost like in Tyler Boyd's hands. And the Raider fans, they're all crying, bullshit. But maybe on a technicality, that's true. Maybe that play should have not counted. It should not have been a touchdown. But at the same time, like, you got to play to the whistle. And when the ball is literally in Boyd's hands, like, I think that was just a blown coverage and a good play by Burrow. So that was probably the most noteworthy point of that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that something like that had to transpire during the game. I mean, the officials were terrible. It seemed like in every game. And that was one thing I was worried about. I mean, I don't know what's going on with these NFL officials. I just feel like every year they get worse. I don't understand it. And it just sucks that play happened to begin with. So I do kind of sympathize with the Raider fans a little bit, but yeah, at the same time, like you said, you got to keep playing. I mean, if the Bengals are still moving, I mean, you might as well just continue on, right, until the play is officially over. So I don't know. It is what it is. I think the Bengals again were the better team. I think they proved that, and the Raiders had their chances. They didn't take advantage, and it was a field goal fest. That's what it is. I mean, if the Raiders would have scored a couple touchdowns instead of field goals, completely different game, right? But didn't happen. So again, that game was okay. Again, it was, they had a bit of drama there at the end, but overall it was just kind of like, yeah, you kind of figure the Bengals were going to win. Matt, let's talk about these two games really quick because there's really not much to say about them. Bills and Patriots. The Bills defeated the Patriots 47-17. That game was pretty much over after the opening kickoff. Mac Jones looked awful. He looked like a rookie in his first playoff game. He looked lost. Belichick had no answers for one of the very few times, maybe ever, in his playoff coaching career. Josh Allen was stellar. He was amazing. He was unstoppable. So, yeah, the Bills got the job done. I think the Bills are playing their best football right now. Over the last few weeks, they've been playing much better than they were throughout the year because they were really inconsistent, wishy-washy, but they're playing their best football now when it really matters. So they're a really dangerous team. And the Patriots, I feel like they kind of overachieved this year. I don't think many people thought they were going to win as many games as they did or even make the playoffs, but they did. Kudos to them, but they did lose 4 out of their last 5. So they're still a young and unproven team there.
Yeah, New England just ran into a buzzsaw, just flat out. Josh Allen is playing out of his mind right now, and that game he had was historically good. Just running around everywhere, passing it everywhere. It was frigid cold temperatures, mind you. Because I was thinking originally that this was going to be like a ground and pound type game, but no. Freaking Josh Allen just gunslinging in that frigid weather. It was quite beautiful to watch, honestly. I agree with you with the Patriots as well. Great team. They definitely overachieved, though, which I'm glad they did not get like the first or second seed, which at one point looked like they may have, achieved that. And if that was the case, they would have been the most least deserving 1 or 2 seed ever in football history, in my opinion. But still a good team. Credit to Belichick. But the Bills, I mean, they got a real chance at getting the Super Bowl, I'm telling you.
No, they do. And I definitely wouldn't have said that like 2 months ago because, again, they were just all over the place, man. I mean, they lost to the freaking Jacksonville Jaguars earlier this year, 9-6. So, I mean, that kind of tells you just how much of a roller coaster season they've had. But, yeah, they're figuring it out at the right time. And I agree. They might be the most dangerous team in all of football right now. So, good luck this week, Kansas City. Matt, real quick on this game, Buccaneers and Eagles, really nothing to report from this one. I mean, the final score was 31-15, but the Eagles scored those 15 points in the last few minutes of the game, I think. I mean, the Bucs were just, complete control from the beginning of this one. And the Bucs, I mean, they have a lot of injuries, Matt. I mean, Godwin, of course, has been out for a little while now. They released Antonio Brown, but it didn't matter. I mean, they have Brady. The Eagles don't. End of story. This was no contest. I knew going into this one that the Eagles had no chance unless Brady got hurt, like in the beginning of the game or something.
Yeah, those injuries you mentioned for the fucking years, that'll probably be more proven to be potentially costly next round or for sure the following round, assuming they make it. This game was just a snooze. I didn't even watch it. It was just one of those games where just like, good. I'm waiting to the next one because there's no way Brady was going to lose to Philadelphia. Just no. Like, if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles pulled off that game, then we probably would have opened the show talking about that game.
And then Nick Sirianni, their head coach, he's also an idiot. Resting his starters week 18 against the Cowboys. Dude, you're not a number 1 seed. Why are you resting your starters, man? That traditionally pretty much never works for teams that do that. Ask us ex-San Diego Charger fans, because our dumbass coaches would always rest the players the last week of the season, and they have a week or 2 off, and they'd come out completely flat and rusty in the playoffs. Like, you got to keep playing your guys. I understand about injuries, but injuries can happen anytime. So that's another side rant. Sorry. Moving on, again, real quickly, the other garbage game from this weekend. Chiefs and Squealers. Ben Roethlisberger's retirement party.
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, it's funny ride with that game is because it was 0-0 for a good while, like deep into the second quarter, in fact. And then TJ Watt probably defensive player of the year, scores a touchdown of all things, and the Squealers, I should say, are up 7-0. They're up 7-0, and you're kind of thinking, well, maybe, Roethlisberger's going to – he might just need like a 1 or 2 scoring drives. That's all he needs. The defense is carrying him, but, that kind of fell apart as soon as they scored that touchdown. The Chiefs scored 21 in the second and then end up winning 42-21. Just not a good game, honestly. It was – now, I wasn't looking forward to it to begin with because it just felt like with Roethlisberger, like – it felt like we've already said goodbye to him, even though he was still playing, kind of thing. Like, because he had that game with the Browns at last home game, and then that game versus the Ravens probably should have been his final game to begin with, because they clearly did not deserve a playoff spot. They won that game, and then the Chiefs they cooked them.
Kansas City barbecue. Yeah, I mean, for some reason I had this feeling that game was going to be a little closer than it was, just because they had just played those two teams. They just played a few weeks ago. So I felt like the Steelers were going to make it more competitive. And I thought maybe because it was Roethlisberger's last hurrah that the officials were going to, try to make the game closer than it needed to be. But none of that happened. The Chiefs clearly were the better team. I think after the T.J. Watt touchdown, Mahomes threw 5 consecutive touchdowns, I want to say. I believe that's what happened. So, it was no contest after that. They needed T.J. Watt to strip like 10 more fumbles and return them for touchdowns in order for them to win that game, Matt, because it wasn't going to happen. The Steelers couldn't do anything on offense. Big Ben should have retired 2 or 3 years ago. It's ridiculous that he hung on this long. But he made the playoffs in his final year, so I guess it makes me look like an idiot for saying that. But the guy just hasn't had it for a while. He can't throw the ball more than like 15 yards down the field. It's a joke. And I know the Steelers' offensive line sucks. That doesn't help. But gosh, I mean, the guy's moving around like a 60-year-old. It just doesn't make sense. And the Steelers never drafted a quarterback. They still haven't drafted his replacement.
That's what it went wrong.
Yeah. And Mike Tomlin continues to get a free pass every year. I know he's won a Super Bowl, but how long ago was that, man? I know the Steelers don't believe in firing their coaches. They've had, 3 in the last 100 years? But, I mean, come on.
Just to wrap it with Big Ben anyway, I do think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but like you said, he should have retired at least last year at the latest. So, Tomlin, he's just going to keep coaching there. He's not going to get fired. And the reporters keep asking about like college positions. Like earlier in the year, they asked about the USC position. He basically belittled that reporter to hell. But I like Tomlin. I do like Tomlin. I actually I don't think he deserves to be fired. I'm not as critical as you are of him, because year in, year out, defensively, they're always top in the NFL, at least one of the best. And they're always competitive, too. They never have a bad year. They might underperform, yes, but their biggest mistake is just not grooming a quarterback earlier. They could have drafted – I mean, hell, they could have drafted a guy like Mac Jones or Justin Fields if they really wanted to, just have him sit behind Big Ben this year. And – now they got nothing, and that's probably going to screw them over next year.
Yeah, because Mason Rudolph might be the worst backup quarterback in all of football. And do they still have Dwayne Haskins?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so that's who they have on their roster after Ben. So they're definitely going to have to do something. If they don't draft somebody, they're going to have to make a trade or sign somebody, because you can't go into the season next year with those two guys as your only quarterback. All right, Matt, last game to break down, the most entertaining. Although it didn't quite live up to the hype for about 3 quarters, but finally, once the 4th quarter rolled around, we got what we were hoping for. The 40 Whiners and the Cowgirls. Ooh.
Yeah, that was definitely the best game of Super Wild Card Weekend. By the way, I just want to say, side note, I really think it's corny how they call it super wild card weekend. Do you think so? Like, why do you have to call it? Like, why do you have to add the super to that? But
yeah, no,
anyway, back to the game. Yeah, Cowboys 49ers just, I mean, really kind of like how we were talking about the Chargers to start off this show. The Cowboys are very similar in the sense that year after year, there's a lot of buildup. There's a lot of hype. There's maybe even Super Bowl expectations. But there's usually something that goes down in the biggest game that they need the most. And then they're sitting on their asses Super Bowl Sunday watching the game.
I mean, we hear this almost every year that the Cowboys are competitive. Like, oh, look out for the Cowboys. It's like, they haven't done anything since their last Super Bowl in '95, man. Like, give me a break. It's the same thing every single year. Just because they're America's team, we're going to hype them up and all this. I mean, look, the talent is there for the Cowboys. I'm not denying that. But I don't know why we have to just anoint them as just like, oh, put them on this pedestal. They're, the best team in the league. It's like, no, they're not. And Matt, I've said it on this show several times in the past. I am not a big Dak Prescott fan. I said, do not give him that mega contract. Stay away. Well, of course, they gave him the mega contract. What was it, 4 years, 160 million or whatever, largest contract ever. And sure enough, man, what does he do? He falls flat on his face. Playoff time. Just did not deliver, had an awful game. And then, of course, the ending of the game, man, we got to talk about it. Cowboys are driving. They're trying to get in a position where they could throw it into the end zone, try to tie it up, send it to overtime. With, was it 14 seconds left? He decides to call his own number and run up the middle with no timeouts. And it's bad enough that he decides to do that in the first place. But if you're going to do that, you better get your ass down after like 5 at a max 10 yards. But no, he just keeps on running a good, 15, 20 yards. Then he slides down to the ground. And at that point, I think there was only 8 or 7 seconds left, somewhere around there. And everybody in Dallas is complaining, oh, well, the official wasn't quick enough to get up to the line and touch the ball so the Cowboys could snap it and spike it. But it's like, you shouldn't put the official in that position to begin with, man. Why would you do that? Made no sense. No game awareness.
Yeah, it's true too. And plus, Prescott, after the slid, he gave the ball. Nice. After Prescott ran, rather than giving the ball to the official, he gave it to his center, and the ref has to touch the ball before he play.
Everybody knows that the official has to touch and spot the ball before he can snap it. Like, why would you give it to your center? This isn't backyard football.
I mean, I get that it was a frantic situation, to say the least, but same time, to like what you were saying before, like the mindset before that play should have been, if you are going to run it, like you said, 5, absolute most 10, but preferably like 7 yards. Find that official, spike it, and then have that one last shot into the end zone, which I think is another thing too. Like, even if they did clock it, I don't think they would have won anyway. I mean, very unlikely, but that's just the Cowboys for you, man. Like, going back to Mike McCarthy, or we haven't talked about him yet, but when they first hired him, that was a bit of a head scratcher. Like, I know he had success in Green Bay. I know they won a Super Bowl, but I feel like a lot of that is just because they had Aaron Rodgers, not really because of McCarthy and his, play calling and whatnot. Also, Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, like he probably was once a head coaching candidate. He probably has ruined that now because of this game.
Well, I don't know. Supposedly, he's got like 10 different interviews lined up.
Well, I feel sorry for whoever hires him, if he does get hired. But
he's not ready.
No, it's just
he's not ready to be a head coach. I'll say that right now. He's not even ready to be an offensive coordinator, clearly.
Yeah, well, this Cowboys team this year, right? They just beat up on all the piss poor teams, which is fine. But every time they played a relevant opponent or a playoff caliber team, they always fell flat. I mean, they lost to Kansas City. They got blown out by Denver. I remember watching that one. Uh, they lost to Tampa. They lost to Arizona, which was probably their worst loss, which should have been a sign for some of these sports experts of signs of things to come, because the Cardinals, as we mentioned earlier, they've been struggling, and yet even they beat up the Cowboys pretty good. So it's a mess there in Dallas, and they're the joke of the sports world for sure. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, I'm not too shocked though that they lost, believe it or not. I actually thought the 49ers were going to win this one. I'm not saying that just because it happened, but I was just suspect of the Cowboys. The 49ers, you know what they have, right? Just to talk about them a little bit. 49ers got a good running game, and they got defense, and that's perfect for playoff football. And the Cowboys are just undisciplined and cocky as well, I believe.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned undisciplined. The Cowboys were completely undisciplined and they are completely underprepared. They were unprepared for this game. It was so obvious, man. Like, I don't know what McCarthy and his coaching staff was doing during that week of practice leading up to the game, but they just looked like they had no business being out there, man. It took them 3 full quarters to finally start being like, oh yeah, I think we figured it out. I think we know what we're doing now. And they started making it a game, but it really took a Jimmy Garoppolo interception, which seems to always happen at some point during a game for the 49ers, to really kind of give them that momentum and swing, the game a little bit. But again, like, Dak was off the entire game. McCarthy is clueless like always. And then it comes out after the game, oh yeah, Zeke's been playing with like a tear in his knee for the last several weeks. Well, then why the hell is he out there? The guy looks like he's 50 years old. He's gained 100 pounds. Like, take him off the damn field. It's a joke. Like, oh, I'm going to be macho, man. I'm going to play through it. Okay, well, thanks for hurting your team, dipshit.
But either way, I do think the 49ers deserve a lot. The 49ers deserve a lot of credit, though. Deebo Samuel, if people don't know about him yet somehow, they need to know about him, because I think he's a stud. I think he's almost like the Otani of football, because he's basically both a running back and a receiver out there, just do it all type of player. But as far as the Cowboys go, though, I personally think McCarthy should. I think he should go. I'm a believer in giving coaches chances, but being quoted as America's team and having that kind of incompetency. I remember watching Hard Knocks, right? Remember the Cowboys were on Hard Knocks before the season? I watched a little bit of those episodes of the Cowboys, and their whole atmosphere just seemed way too loose. Like, I get it, like, you want the players to have their fun and whatnot, but I don't know, just that feeling of them was just like, yeah, they're talking on here as if Super Bowl contenders, like always. I mean, even next year they'll be saying the same thing again. No. But just the way that operation is run there, not a believer of it. Not at all. I mean, of course, a lot of it is because of Jerry Jones as well, and until he passes, but even then, it's still going to be part of the Jones family, that team, I imagine. But it's a mess there.
Well, it's similar to the Chargers with the Spanos family. Unless the owners get out of the way, they're probably never going to win a Super Bowl. And in the Cowboys case, I know they've won Super Bowls in the past, but I don't think they're ever going to win another one as long as Jerry Jones is still just hands-on like he is. He has to be involved in every decision. He sits there in the middle of the table every draft. He wants to know who they're taking. He gives his insight. So, yeah, I mean, he's been getting in the way since he fired Jimmy Johnson all those years ago. I know they won a Super Bowl after that with Barry Switzer as their head coach, but I mean, come on, man. He just always finds a way to muck it up. Mike McCarthy should not be a head coach anymore in the NFL. Just should not be. He won a Super Bowl because of Aaron Rodgers. Point blank. He also had a great team around him that year when they did win it. But yeah, Mike McCarthy is not a good coach. He never really has been. And he just is continuing to show that. He's now showing that as a Dallas Cowboy head coach. So, all right. Well, that was a little random. Sorry about that, folks. We were having some technical difficulties there. And so now Matt's out in his truck, and now I have a baby in my hands. Where'd you come from, little one?
A lot has changed in such a short amount of time.
But a lot has remained the same. Well, man, I think we pretty much said everything that we needed to say about super mild card weekend. So I think that's going to wrap things up for this episode of Big Mouth Woolly Fast Podcast.
Yeah.
All I would like to say is I hope this week's divisional round is much more exciting. And if it's not, then, well, this is the worst NFL postseason ever.
And we'll discuss more of it next week.
I hope. Until next time, I'm Ryan Willis.
Ryan Willis.
And I'm Ivory Willis. See you later.